So about 2 weeks ago, I had received a comment stating that this person had found the end of series spoilers, potential spoilers for One Piece. And when I had read these, I was very doubtful. I didn't think they were very true, but apparently these rumors or quote unquote spoilers have been spreading around like wildfire. Other YouTubers have been receiving it. And now a YouTuber named Sawyer7Mage has actually covered them. And I'm sure many other YouTubers will cover it as well. Now, once again, I am very doubtful about these spoilers. Other people might feel differently. Other people might find them somewhat believable. Some people might believe that parts of this are true. But overall, if I were you, I wouldn't worry too much about feeling spoiled by these. Go ahead and check them out. I will provide the link in the description down below. But don't get me wrong here, okay? There are some very good parts to this prediction slash spoiler, but I wouldn't really categorize it as an actual spoiler. There's no real evidence for it being true, and it does just seem to be a little rumor that has been going around. But getting into the actual spoiler itself, I am going to analyze it and give you my thoughts on each individual part of it, point out the flaws, and give you my overall conclusion. So it starts off saying that Luffy did indeed beat Cracker, but he is very injured and Nami had escaped using the Beaver card. Sanji, for some wild reason, decides to make up with his family and they decide to help him out against Big Mom, and then everybody gets together with Jinbei and they escape to Wano Kuni. So right off the bat, this is very vague and it lacks a lot of details. It all seems like stuff that anybody can really predict. And it doesn't even mention the whole mirror dimension which Chopper decided to use to help them escape. Okay, I would imagine that if these were legit spoilers, they would bring up the whole mirror dimension and how they exactly would escape and save Sanji. And Sanji reuniting with his family, it's very doubtful, especially given the recent chapter. And it doesn't even note the roles of the other Sweet Commanders and the fate of Caesar and the whole gigantification experiment. These are all very core details to the Big Mom arc, and to not really note these, it doesn't really feel that spoilerish, at least at this part. Now, the next part of this involves the Wano Kuni arc. It basically says that Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and the whole crew will basically sort of train their abilities, and Luffy will train his haki, and they will prepare to attack Kaido and his crew. Now, this feels pretty likely, but at the same time, kind of obvious. We know that this is probably going to happen regardless of whether or not this is a spoiler. But moving on to the next part, it gets a lot more specific. It says that Kid, Apu, and Hawkins are all locked in cages. And this doesn't make sense because Apu had been working under Kaido, as we had learned previously. So for him to now be locked in a cage, there should at least be some kind of explanation for this. Did he betray Kaido? We don't know. The spoilers don't really tell much about this. It then goes on to talk about the other calamities, and then Jack, who is apparently Kaido's right-hand man, which, as we know, that was stated previously in a false translation, so I'm not sure if that is legit or not, or if he was just buying into the false translation. Now, the next part goes into more detail about the fights and the pair-ups between the two sides during the war. But the one thing I don't fully understand is why doesn't the spoiler really tell about the exact abilities of each side? I would imagine it would at least tell about Kaido's Devil Fruit and how it's going to work against Luffy, but it just sort of talks about the basic fight and how it's going to result. It does talk about a new Ashura form and a potential Gear 5th, but it doesn't really, once again, go into the full detail of it. It just sort of says that Luffy sacrifices his body for Gear 5th, and that Zoro opens his eye and reveals a new Ashura. But a lot of these ideas have been talked about by theorists in the past, so I'm not really too shocked by these new ideas. In fact, I've covered them on my channel before, and it just goes to show that really this isn't anything mind-boggling, like this isn't brand new, something that only Oda could come up with. In fact, it almost sounds like a collection of different fan theories that have been developed over the past few years. Toward the end of the war, Luffy ends up actually dying in the process of beating Kaido, and then Law revives him using the surgery. Once again, this has been something that people have been predicting for a very long time, nothing that only Oda could really come up with. And then this ends with Luffy actually getting captured by the Marines and ending up in Impel Down. So as a whole, this whole Wano arc scenario, it does sound pretty realistic to some degree. It's lacking a lot of details, it has a lot of holes in it, and it just sounds like a pretty good prediction at the end of the day. It doesn't sound like a legitimate spoiler. So as much as I liked this prediction, I cannot see it as an actual spoiler. It has a lot of themes to it that have been covered, and it doesn't have that element of surprise that Oda usually comes through with that nobody can replicate. Okay, it doesn't matter how good of a theorist you are, you cannot read the creator's mind. So that's one of the reasons I cannot see this as an actual spoiler, but it is, once again, a very good theory slash prediction. So after reading up to this part, I actually looked into the comment section down below, and I found this one comment from this guy claiming to be the creator of this little prediction, and he claims that this was just his prediction and that it was not spoilers at all. Obviously, I can't prove that this is the actual creator, but this is what I saw in the comment section, so I wonder if this is the actual guy who made this, and if this is just an actual rumor that has been spreading around. It definitely seems like it's just a rumor. I just want to get that into people's heads. It's probably not a legitimate spoiler. So I'm already very, very convinced that this is not a legitimate spoiler, as you can tell. And this is just a pretty good prediction. And I have my own thoughts on this arc, which I will cover in the future. And since the second half gets so bulky, my friend JackPiece wanted to cover this and give his own thoughts on it. So here is JackPiece.
So what happened after Law sacrificed his life to Luffy, they took Luffy to Impel Down and are doing the same thing that they did to Ace, going to keep him impelled down and then execute him. But we're going to have a similar thing to Marineford. What I think of this, I don't really think he's gonna totally copy the exact same concept of that. Oda's good with that. He does similar concept from each arc, like Dressrosa and Alabasta. They're very similar kind of arcs, but they're different in their own ways to make them their own different arcs. I do not think this is going to happen. The structure of this arc, at least. There's different things in this arc, but it's basically the same premise. Well, the thing is, they're not running through Impel Down. They're just going to basically Marineford, but we don't know where they're taking him to execute him. So they take him to the execution point, and the Straw Hats come. First off, the Straw Hats come with the Grand Fleet of 5,600 people. That's a lot of goddamn people. And Zoro led the opening attack, basically, and bowed to Luffy, crying to pledge his allegiance to him, basically, that he's done multiple times already. So, yeah, and so do the other Straw Hats, and Bartolomea does the same, and they're all crying, basically. And Shanks hears this news about Luffy getting executed, and he decides, I'm not gonna help. This is gonna be a trial for his strength. He beat Kaido. Well, let's see if he can survive this. I don't believe this. Shanks wouldn't do that to Luffy. I don't think so. And in this spoilers, he says that he's only sending Rayleigh to go help Luffy, because Rayleigh goes to congratulate Luffy on beating Kaido and also helps. Why wouldn't Shanks come? Blackbeard's there, and in the spoilers, it says that the Gorosei are coming after Blackbeard comes, and all of Luffy's allies come to this war too. Alabasta comes, Dressrosa, the Fishman Island people, everyone comes to help Luffy, and even the Impel Down prisoners, like led by Mr. 2, I'm pretty sure, because Mr. 2 is still in Impel Down. Monkey D. Dragon shows up too with the revolutionaries, but he says he won't join in unless Blackbeard joins in too. But Blackbeard's also there, so he also joins in. So it's a war of everyone. And how the person describes it in the spoilers is the war of the best of the best. No, none of the Yonko are here though. None of the Yonko, which I find very interesting. I feel that Big Mom would come after Luffy too, from what happened earlier on in the spoilers, how they escaped with Sanji. The revolutionaries' overall goal is to take down the world government, as we know from the series, and in the spoilers, as I said earlier, the Gorosei end up showing up with Cypher Pole. And I don't know, it's going to be a hard battle to win if this is actually true. And the thing that starts the war is Zoro fighting Mihawk, basically. That's what I think would happen. There's going to be a war, I think, but not in these certain circumstances. I do not think that it's going to be the same circumstances as Marineford, but this is what this guy puts, and as Cody said earlier, this may be all bullshit, so yeah. That's basically the war he described. Everyone coming together to save Luffy, and he doesn't really describe after that what happens, but that's basically...
So that was JackPiece, a developing YouTuber, and if you enjoyed his commentary, check his channel out down below. He is a very good friend of mine, and I've known him for a pretty long time. If you enjoyed this commentary / video and you feel like this cleared a lot of stuff up, go ahead and click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all later.